what I want to talk today about is strategies to quantify business value. So you're going to hear a lot of great content at the conference this week about building technical solutions, practical answers to business problems using BPM. That's not what this talk today is about. What we're going to focus on is the ever-important business case. And I'm guessing by the fact that all of you are here in this particular session that you have a vested interest in business cases. The ROI calculation that drives to the funding of a lot of our projects. To get them funded, to get to the next level, you've got to build a good business case, an ROI calculation. Quantifying those pieces so that people can get buy-in to your ideas is a hard problem. That's the meat of what we're going to talk about today. So these are the different value elements and the units of measure that we might use for them. So all right, now how do we take this identification of value and turn it into a business case? We have to construct the mechanics of an artifact that we can present to all of our stakeholders that turns these value ideas into a quantifiable, measurable equation. So we'll dive into each of these. Design. First thing you have to do, you've got to list your value categories. I identified a bunch before, but really take the time and sit down and think about which of those parameters are impacted, both positive and negative, both up front and along the life of the project. What do we know already? What sources of information exist? Do we have database tables of information we can reference? Do we have people who are experts in the field that we can pull this from? And then what needs to be researched? Somebody has to be assigned to the task to go fill in those gaps, do the looking, the searching, and under the blankets and the covers and the seat cushions in your company of information to find those pieces. Then once you've done the design, you have to build it. You have to construct it. Excel formulas, tables. You need to build a PowerPoint to present this to the rest of the company, to articulate your ideas on value. And then you need to do the legwork of sampling the areas of gaps, the things that need to be researched. Once you've built your business case, this is somewhat you in a silo, your idea or your team's idea. Now you need to take it to the rest of the organization. You need to do playback. You need to pass it around. You need to test it out, try it out, change the parameters, look at tomorrow's data, the next day's data. Does it evolve in the way that you thought? And then finally, measure and integrate, right? There's going to be some day that your business case is going to be realized, or maybe not the way that you thought. So there's a future state that you need to bring your team back together, bring this exercise back together on a regular cadence, and see where you're making impact. And finally, somebody gets to say, I told you so. At the end, through measure and iterate, as I said, it's not a one and done. You need to look to the key points in your project life cycle, bring in the folks that have ideas, and iterate over it. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into each of these different areas. I'm going to talk through some ideas on what the mechanics are, and then also give Ted's opinion, Ted's experience on some strategies that work well for me. Hopefully will resonate with you. So I talked a little bit about who's impacted in the design phase. So with this, make sure you think about all of the parameters. So there's obviously the people. If we're building a new process for a team, they're impacted. So the easy thing is to look to them and say, all right, we know the customer service team is going to use this impacted. Or the back office team who's going to be handling the new screens, they're going to be impacted. But think about the edges as well. Who else is impacted? On the other side of the design equation is not just the benefits, but the cost. Same questions again, right? Here on the other side of the equation is who will it cost? Will it cost us dollars, IT time, software licensing fees, right? These are the things that detract from the value. But also look at the other more mechanical and tangible items. Electricity, server space, data storage, right? These are all costs not just in people and human capital equity, not just in dollars and cents, but the other mechanics within your organization that end up as part of the investment that you need to make to bring this program forward. I promised you strategies for each of these, and I've got a few, and this is the first one. In the design phase, my strategy for you is guess. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ted, I flew all the way down to Austin to this conference to hear your strategies, and you have for me guess. Well, the reality is I'm not saying guess at the entire business case. Certainly don't. There are a lot of mechanics that you're going to be able to piece together from the data you have right away. They're going to come clear. And you're going to work hard in other areas to research and bring in the pieces that you don't have. The biggest problem with business cases that start here is the paralysis in not being okay with having only 75% of it clear. There are some elements that nobody has a crystal ball on, they just can't know. We think there's going to be an increase in productivity in the team with this new UI because they're complaining about what's there. How much? I'm not sure. So construction, step one, do the math, right? Build the formulas, fill out the spectrum of possible events. You've got to test it, change the variables, right? I've assumed that we're going to manufacture at 15% a day because we've been manufacturing at 15% a day for the last 4 years. What happens if you don't? Right? Your business is going to change from the start of your program to the end. You need to play with those variables and see what those changes do. Does it still align with how you think this program will react? So the next tip I've got is rephrase the question. So what does this mean? Here, I'll give you some examples of how this could work. So, for instance, you're trying to drive down into the details. You ask one of your team members, how much usage does a legacy system get? All right, well, I don't know. I think Sally uses it on Tuesdays, right? I don't know, I'm not quite sure. Rephrase the question. Can I get a copy of the login logs from the last month? Oh yeah, Sam's got that, right? Not only does that show you maybe who used it, how long they used it. There are gems of data hidden within your organization. The audience may not have the answer to the question you asked. Try a different one. Phrase it in the context of what they know. So the next phase, playback. All right, what comes here? Here, we need to socialize the business case. Get on the road with it. Take it to anyone who will listen. Put stakeholders to the test to agree or disagree. This is very important. This is much like acceptance of a project. You build a solution, it has to meet a certain criteria, and then it's accepted or it's rejected. Embrace the challengers. And I don't mean with two hands. Embrace the feedback that you get and take it to heart. So, my next strategy, you are right, but. Use this phrase. You are right, but. You're going to get a lot of challenges to it. Things like, well, you don't have the data. You can't project this from what you've laid in front of me. You're right, but what we do have is historical data. I don't know what it's going to look like in the future, but what I've done is build a business case based on historical data. And in 3 months, we're going to start collecting new data because our program's starting. With that new data, we're going to feed it back in, and that'll become our baseline. So you're right. I don't have this data in the future, but this is my strategy for bringing it in. And then finally, measure and iterate. New quarter, solution launch. You got to take a new baseline. The reality you lived in on day one when you started your project is not the reality of the day that you go live. Things change. There are moments in time along the way that need to be considered. As your business evolves in ways that nobody expected, that you didn't even take as parameters to your business case, you need to be cognizant and aware of those and adjust it along the way. Take a new baseline. Measure. Measure the impact. Measure both those that you can over the life of it. If you're on a 12-month project, you can't wait 12 months to start collecting data and bringing it in. You had an expectation on day one. As you roll out phases, as you make an impact, measure those, bring them in. Don't look to the day after go live to be the first time that you pull this data in to measure the impact. Finally, recognize the fact that your results are not your own. Your results are a combination of the impact that your program made and that changing baseline. If you had an assumption that sales were going to grow at 2% and they grew at 5%, guess what? You don't get credit for that 3%. However, on the flip side, if you expected you were going to get 10,000 hours of productivity out of a 100-person workforce, and at the end, you got 9,000 hours of productivity, but somehow 12 of those left for a competitor, you get credit for that as well. Your baseline has changed. I guarantee it. Nobody's business stays static. So the results of your business case are absolutely a product of the new baseline as well as the impact that you made. And you've got to go to those end states and measure and then deduce out what your program had an impact on and what just changing business parameters dictated. My final strategy for you of this is observe the change. It's very easy to finish your program, run a dashboard report, look at the numbers and say, hey, we're done. We finished it. The numbers say we hit 8% target, we hit 8% target, we're done. Observe the change means look at all of those impacted areas, both the value elements and the people impacted that we didn't design, and go to them. Go to the front lines and see where you made an impact. If you've got a report that says we're producing 5% more out of the warehouse, and your business case said you produce 5% more out of the warehouse, you're not done. Go to the warehouse. Go to the people who are making that impact, who are using your new solution to make change, and ask them, have you seen an increase? Reports say you do. Have you? If you have, is it because of my new program? Dig into the results, both positive and negative, to see where you've made an impact. Two things will happen. One, you can go up to the boss and say, yeah, not only does the report say we're doing it, I went to the field and I observed this. It's really working. Good job. You made a good decision to deploy this program, and I went and see the impact, and it's great. The second thing that's going to happen is by talking to all the people that you've made an impact on, you're going to get those great next ideas on what to do next. Thanks, Ted. Thanks for the new program. I am so much quicker at my job right now. You know what would be great if we could do next, right? You've teed up the next project already. The people that are impacted by it, both positive and negative, are going to really appreciate the fact that you've taken an interest to come in and talk to them. Not only that, they are fresh off of the experience of your new program, and they're primed with ideas to give you to go for the next business case. So in closing, hopefully I've given you all some useful ideas on how to go to the business and quantify these elements of the business case. Business cases, ROI calculations, these are critically important elements of our business. I say love your business case. Print it out. Put it on the wall by your cube. Look at it every day, because in the end, the reason we're building these programs is to make an impact on the business. And we're the ones who went and defined the business case on where the impact's going to be. So challenge yourself. Am I building to those business case elements, and am I making an impact towards those? The more effort and time you put into the business case, the more aligned you are with the program. You can fix bugs, right? But you can't apply an eye patch or an eye fix to a business case. If you miss the underlying assumptions from day one, you're going to miss the mark even on a fully successful technical deployment of your program.